My father is a boxing enthusiast. I was influenced by him and started boxing at a very young age. This experience happened when I was 23 years old. At that time, I was taking part in boxing training. We were working in teams of 2 and we were fighting against each other. This training was both challenging and fun for me. I managed to knock my opponent to the ground in a fierce real-life confrontation. I felt proud and excited. When the coach blew the whistle to stop, I stepped back and stood my ground. However, just then, my opponent suddenly sneaked up on me. I was completely defenseless. I lost my balance and eventually fainted on the ground. The attack left me in shock and pain because I did not expect my opponent to strike at this time. The coach helped me into the restroom. At that time, my consciousness started to become blurred and my breathing became difficult. The coach realized the seriousness of the situation and the coach immediately called the emergency number. A short time later, an ambulance arrived at the training facility and quickly transported me to the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, my body temperature was rising rapidly. The doctor immediately took steps to lower my body temperature. The doctor got ice packs and placed them around my body. But my physical state was still unstable. Suddenly, my vision began to blur. After a while, when I slowly opened my eyes, I found myself in a completely different place. In this place, I could not feel the pain I felt before, and everything became peaceful. The room looked very old. The walls of the room were made of rough stone. The ceiling of the room was made of sturdy wood. There was a table in the center of the room, which was made of rustic wood. Standing in front of me was a man who opened his arms to me as if to welcome me. The man was wearing a robe with a golden sash around his waist with an elaborate buckle. A brown shawl was draped over his shoulders. His skin looked healthy and smooth. And his hair and beard were black. At that time, I did not know this man. I was later told that the man was Jesus. Jesus did not speak, but his eyes were full of warmth and compassion. I had a feeling of acceptance and reassurance. In the room, I noticed that there was another lady. She exuded nobility and grace. She had golden hair. This lady was wearing a sophisticated blue dress. When I saw her, I tried to shake hands with her. The moment I touched her hand, a wonderful feeling instantly filled my whole body. It was like traveling through time and space, and we were suddenly in a completely different place. This place was a garden. This garden was filled with flowers and plants of all colors, emitting an intoxicating aroma. In the center of the garden was a huge fountain. Behind the fountain was a vast meadow. I could see the lake and the mountains in the distance. There were also a few small boats in the lake. Here, I saw a slice of my past life. I saw many things that happened in the past, covering all aspects of my life. I saw a new classmate in elementary school who was often excluded and isolated. I decided to take the initiative to approach him, talk to him and become his friend. Slowly, he became more outgoing and confident, which made me feel very happy because I knew I was making a positive impact on his life. I also saw that during a past argument, I said something hurtful out of anger. I didn't think about the consequences of my words. My words hurt the other person's feelings and had a negative impact on our relationship. I also saw little things that I had forgotten. Those forgotten memories now resurfaced in my mind. These things may not mean much, but they form a part of my life. When she held my hand again, we traveled again. It was as if we had arrived in ancient Roman times. The architecture here was very interesting to me. The surrounding buildings were magnificent, with heavy wooden beams decorating the entrance. One particularly majestic building caught my attention, with its huge columns. There were some people wearing gorgeous clothes, and the style looked very exquisite. They wore golden jewels. However, most people wore plain and practical clothes. Their costumes were simple, but everyone looked very energetic. Suddenly, several people gathered around. One of the men was wearing a loose robe made of rough linen. The cuffs of the robe were decorated with simple embroidery. He also wore a thin cord as a belt. The other female wore a soft tunic in a soft light blue color. One of them approached me and asked me who I was. Although I felt a little confused, I told him my name. This person then asked for more information about my family and seemed to want to confirm my identity. Then, they asked for information about my grandfather. I told them. They seemed relieved to hear my answer and had a look of joy on their faces. They told me that they were my grandfather's great-grandparents, and the news came as a shock to me. These people were full of goodwill and they welcomed me, telling me how happy they were to see me. These relatives extended their arms to me and hugged me. Their hugs made me understand that this was a safe place. Next, they led me into a spacious hall. We were surrounded by a bright white light, which gave a pleasant and peaceful feeling. In the hall, I noticed a soft blue glow emanating from us, which seemed to symbolize a mysterious power. The relatives led me to a special area. I saw that this room was filled with chairs that were stately and ornate. They seemed to be seats with special meaning, and they represented the family's heritage and authority. They showed me my grandfather's chair. This chair was at the end of the hall. It was made of precious wood, inlaid with jewels and ornate ornaments. I sat in the chair for a while and it gave me great comfort. I looked around curiously. I saw that the surroundings were filled with every generation of my father's family, whose existence dates back hundreds of years. They each sat in their own chairs, each with a unique style and character. They sat quietly and solemnly. The members of these families wear distinctive costumes that showcase the cultures of different eras. The earliest generations were dressed in ancient and simple costumes. They wore wide robes, made of rough linen or cotton, in dark brown colors. Their clothes were not overly decorated. I also saw some more modern clothes. They wore slim-fitting robes made of wool. Their clothes pay more attention to tailoring and details. Through these different generations of clothing, I could feel that each generation had its own unique style and characteristics. I noticed that the older generation did not come up to talk to me. I felt confused and wondered the reason for this. Perhaps it was because they were not familiar with me yet, or out of a traditional conservatism. Even though they did not interact with me, I could feel the caring look in their eyes. Shortly after, I saw a woman approaching me. She had a dazzling glow that was unlike any other. Her eyes were filled with warmth and compassion. She was wearing a light blue robe. As she approached me, I felt a strong wave of love. This love made me feel at ease and relaxed, like a baby in its mother's arms. Her gaze was gentle and deep, as if she could see into my heart. She gently stroked my hair. She said to me in a soft voice, "Child, now you must go back to Earth where there is still work you need to finish." Although I did not want to leave this place, I understood that I could not stay here. There were still many things waiting for me to accomplish. At the moment of farewell, my relatives surrounded me, expressing their love and blessings to me. A white light surrounded me and I floated. Time and space gradually distorted and I was brought back to earth. When I opened my eyes, I saw my father standing by the bed, holding my hand tightly. He couldn't contain his emotions. His eyes were moist. This was the first time I saw my father cry. My father had always been a very strong man. When I returned home, I told my grandfather about the experience. My grandfather could no longer stand and was dependent on a wheelchair to get around after a fall 2 years ago. It was a huge blow to him, and he had experienced moments of depression and despair, and had even tried to commit suicide. I sat next to him and began to describe everything I had seen in heaven. I told him that I had met many relatives in that wonderful place and that they were all friendly and welcoming to me. I specifically mentioned the room full of chairs. I described vividly the scene there, where everyone was surrounded by love and joy. During our conversation, I could feel the change in my grandfather's heart. He began to let go of his past frustrations and despair, and my words seemed to touch his heart. In that moment, I saw a determined glint in my grandfather's eyes. A smile appeared on his face and he tightened his grip on my hand.
In 2013, I had just graduated from college and I was confused about the future. My life was very boring. Later, I found a job as a cashier in a supermarket. At that time, I would come to the supermarket very early every day, wearing uniform work clothes. I stood behind the checkout counter and greeted the customers. The daily work was very monotonous, and the job did not pay well. One weekend, one of my coworkers was out of work because he was sick. The supervisor asked me to fill in for him. I was very unhappy because I was planning to enjoy the weekend. As I was driving to the office, my cell phone suddenly rang. I knew I shouldn't answer the phone while driving, so I just glanced down at the caller ID. It was only 2 seconds, and I didn't notice the red light. My car rushed at a very fast speed into a truck that was moving normally. Time seemed to slow down, and I lost control of my car. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning. I was trapped inside the car, and the scene around me was somewhat blurred. I felt severe pain and I was injured in multiple places in my body. As I lost consciousness, I suddenly appeared in a bright glow. The light emitted a warm energy, which penetrated into every corner of my body. It was as if it was washing the bad things in me and replacing them with a pure love. This kind of love was like nothing I had ever felt before. It surpassed any form of love on earth. It is hard for me to describe the intensity of this love in exact words, because it far surpassed everything I had ever experienced before. I had considered my parents' love to be the purest, but it became small even here. This love gave me a feeling of acceptance that was free from any prejudice and just purely embraced me. It had the power to make me feel at peace inside. In that light, I felt endless kindness and compassion. It made me understand that every person is unique and precious and deserves to be loved and respected. This experience changed my understanding of love. Love is a selfless devotion. A power that transcends personal gain. It made me understand that love is the essence of our innermost being, the bond that connects us to others. Suddenly, I appeared in a white room. This white color did not make my eyes feel uncomfortable, but rather gave a sense of tranquility. In this room, 3 other people were with me. One of them was a tall man. His body emitted a bright glow that made him look as if he was surrounded by light. His eyes were full of wisdom, making one feel his authority and warmth. The second man is an elegant woman. She was wearing a flowing white robe. Her eyes were bright and gentle, and her smile gave a sense of comfort, as if she were an eternal guardian watching over every soul. The third person is a young and mysterious man. He wore a dark blue robe and exuded an aura of mystery around him. All three of these people exuded a divine energy that made me feel calm. This white room became a sacred place, an existence beyond reality. In this room, time seemed to stop. They emitted a dazzling light that made the whole room brighter. One of them spoke to me telepathically. His voice did not come from his mouth, but was communicated directly in my mind. He told me that I would see my past life. The colors of the room began to soften and a kind of giant screen appeared in front of my eyes. I saw my childhood and recalled those innocent and happy times. These images made me re-experience the emotions of the time. Sometimes I would laugh, sometimes I would shed tears. I understand that these are the precious moments in my life that have shaped who I am now. Each decision has had an impact on me and others. After it was over, one of the people asked me what I had learned from all of this. I expressed my opinion that I don't like to see my actions hurt others. I want my actions to help others, not cause them harm. The other person seemed satisfied with my answer. He told me that it was time for me to return to my body. However, I was filled with resistance inside. I insisted that I did not want to go back because my body had just been in a car accident. I did not know what condition it was in, and it might be safer and more comfortable to stay here. I was concerned about the possible after effects or injuries that might occur. Even though I expressed my wishes, it was clear that I did not have a choice. They explained to me that I had to return to my body because I had to continue to grow and learn. They assured me that they would watch over me in silence. I also realized that staying in this white room would not solve the reality of the problem. These three men told me that my family and friends were waiting for me and that they would do everything possible to help me. I had to face the reality and accept the challenges that could happen. They told me that they would always be there for me, in the darkness and in the light. As they guided me, I felt a powerful force surrounding me. The scene around me began to blur, and it was as if I had awakened from a dream. When I opened my eyes, I was surprised to find myself lying in my bedroom bed. This made me feel extremely confused, because I felt like I should be in a hospital, not at home. I heard a man's voice coming from downstairs, and I thought it was my father. So, I was ready to go downstairs to find him. However, when I got downstairs, I saw a strange man on the phone. He looked about my age, but I had never seen him before. This strange man walked quickly toward me. My heart was filled with fear, and I wondered why he was in my house. I tried to recall memories of him, but nothing came to mind. The strange man came closer and closer to me, and I felt very uneasy. So I warned him not to come near me, or I would call the police. However, this warning didn't stop him and he grabbed me from behind. I started shouting, trying to get the attention of others. This man was confused by my reaction and asked me, "What's wrong with you? Are you crazy?" He claimed that he was my husband and that we had been married for 2 years. To prove his claim, he took out his phone and showed me the wedding photo. I was very shocked when I saw the photo. I could not find any information about our marriage in my mind. This made me even more confused and frustrated as to why I had no recollection of this man. At this man's insistence, I was taken to the hospital. During my first night in the hospital, while I was questioning my mental state, the man who had helped me review my life suddenly appeared beside me. His presence surprised me, and I couldn't help but ask him, "Is everything that happened here real?" He smiled and replied, "Yes, due to a mistake, you appeared in the wrong universe." He explained that there are many parallel universes in the world, each with another self. Sometimes, for some reason, a person will travel to the wrong universe. He went on to explain that everything I experienced was real, including the white room. "Now, let me take you back to where you belong." He assured me that I would go back to where I belonged, to my old life. The man reached out and gently touched my shoulder, and I felt a subtle energy pass into my body. Then, the scene around me began to blur, as if time and space were rebooting. When the scene became clear again, I found myself back at the place where the crash occurred. I saw parts of the vehicle scattered on the road, and ambulances and police officers were busy dealing with the scene. After a while, I once again felt severe pain. I couldn't be sure where I was until I heard the voice of a firefighter. He reassured me to hold on, that they would get me out of the situation as soon as possible. Firefighters were using cutters to cut metal. The sound of violent scraping filled my ears. I struggled to stay awake. Firefighters opened a part of the vehicle. Paramedics carried me to the ambulance. The sound of the ambulance echoed in my ears. I struggled to stay awake, but the pain was unbearable. I looked out the window, and the scene outside became very blurry. The doctors worked for nearly 6 hours after I was wheeled into the operating room. When I woke up in bed, the doctor told me how lucky I was. Not only had I survived the crash, but I had no injuries to my brain or spine. My sister was allowed into the hospital room to visit me. She told me how worried she was about me. I asked my sister if my husband had come to the hospital. Her expression became very surprised. She told me that I was not married and did not have a husband. My sister suggested having the doctor re-examine my head to make sure no after effects had occurred. Her concern made me realize that my previous experience might have given me false memories. I began to undergo more tests and evaluations to determine if there were other potential effects. I began to question my mental state and ponder whether what I had experienced earlier was real or a hallucination. My mind was filled with confusion and the hope that I would find answers at the same time. The year after the accident, I began to hear people talking about the Mandela effect. I became very interested in it and began to research it. In my exploration of the Mandela effect, I discovered that the phenomenon may be related to the existence of multiple universes. According to some theories, when someone travels to the wrong universe, their memories can conflict. In addition to the Mandela effect, I also learned about a condition known by doctors as foreign accent syndrome. This is a very rare but real symptom. In some cases, people wake up in a coma state and their verbal expressions suddenly change to a foreign language they have never been exposed to before. When they return from another universe to their own, their memories may conflict. Some theories suggest that it may be related to neural connections in the brain. I understand that many people are atheists and are skeptical of the experience I have described. However, the experience did happen to me, and it was the most memorable experience of my life.